The music of the Grateful Dead, it lives on 15 years after founder Jerry Garcia's death. But what also lives on is the band's business philosophy. And Brian Halligan, he is the author of a new book called Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, What Every Business Can Learn from the Most Iconic Band in History. Brian is also the chief executive and founder of HubSpot. That's a marketing software company that helps businesses get attention on the internet. And he joins us now from Boston. Brian, welcome to Bloomberg.
Thanks for having me, Pim.
Brian, start off by explaining that you've been to, what, over 100 Dead concerts, and there's a specific section at these various concerts that are called taper sections. Explain what they are and why that's important for this whole idea of giving something away free.
Yeah, that's a very good question. In every Grateful Dead concert, there's a big section allocated for people like me who go to a lot of concerts to bring in my recording devices and record the show. And that's very remarkable and unique relative to any other rock and roll band who, there's no way the Who or the Rolling Stones or any other band would allow that. Furthermore, what they said is once you made a tape, Brian, or whoever else was taping, feel free to make a copy for your friend, for your roommate, for your dorm mate, for whoever. And that's how they really were able to spread the music, by having all these tapes in millions of people's hands and expose the music to lots of people. And all those tapes pulled people into their concert, and they were able to convert lots and lots of people to customers.
Brian, were they, in a sense, pioneers of this whole social media phenomenon? Because, I mean, if you describe something that's free and you're able to give it away to your friends and create sort of a passionate fan base, you're not really getting any help from the band. You're doing it with the help of other consumers.
That's right. They were sort of the first, what I call inbound marketers. They were very clever about pushing all this free content out there. Each piece of content was like a little mini magnet that pulled in new customers. And modern businesses today ought to be doing the same things. They should create lots of blog content, YouTube content, ebooks, videos, what have you. Each piece of content that a modern business makes can become like a little mini magnet, like a Grateful Dead bootleg, that will pull potential customers in. So they were early pioneers of social media before there was social media, and I think there's a lot to be learned from those boys 15 years after Jerry's death.
All right, so you've got this whole idea of a freemium business model. What about carving out your own business landscape? The idea being, don't mimic someone else's model, go create your own.
Great point. What I think I work with at HubSpot, we have 3,000 some odd businesses who are customers of ours. And what I think the biggest problem these people have is they've got these Me Too products, Me Too business models, and they look like everybody else out there. What's nice about the internet, Pim, is it opens you up to lots of potential customers, but also lots of potential competitors. So in some way, shape, or form, you've got to have a unique business model, a unique product. And the Dead's product was very unique. It's a little bit blues, a little bit country, a little bit rock and roll, and they fused this very kind of improvisational element on top of it. And they created their own category, jam bands, that has really spread. It's important for new businesses today and existing businesses to really innovate on their product and stand out. And if you can stand out, boy, does the internet help you spread it very, very quickly.
And Brian, it's also okay to fail, right?
It is okay to fail. The Grateful Dead, I mentioned, was very improvisational. Every night they played a 4-hour concert, and let's say you went to 5 concerts in a row. 2 or 3 might be terrific, and they may lay an egg on 2 or 3, but they were very bold and very creative. In the era of an internet, if you're a marketer today, it's important that you try and experiment lots and lots of different things, and you almost want to think as a business person like a venture capitalist as you're investing on all your projects, hoping some will really take off and maybe some will fail and you'll get over it. In fact, there was a great article today in the Wall Street Journal about that talked about this transformation and how businesses should think about how they invest in new models and invest in lots of projects, and hopefully some take off and some fail. But Grateful Dead, we're great at experimenting with lots of things, but especially the music is what we highlight in the book.
All right, well done, Brian Halligan. We're going to continue the conversation. Brian is the author of the book, Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, What Every Business Can Learn from the Most Iconic Band in History. Coming up, we're going to find out why you need to mix up your whole marketing department and also figure out what about food vendors at a Grateful Dead concert and aligning yourself with charity. That's next on Taking Stock. little trucking. Yes. All right. We're not going to do a sing-along just yet. This is Taking Stock on Bloomberg. I'm Pim Fox. The Grateful Dead as marketing wizards. My guest is Brian Halligan. He's the author of Marketing Lessons from the Grateful Dead, what every business can learn from the most iconic band in history. Brian is also the chief executive and founder of HubSpot. Brian, what about mixing up the marketing department? You mentioned in the book that companies ought to really kind of tear up the playbook a little bit and take some chances when it comes to marketing.
That's right. Marketing hasn't changed a whole lot in the last 50 years. Companies like Procter & Gamble and McDonald's have built great companies by pouring huge amount of capital into television ads and interrupting us in our living rooms and being very efficient about deploying that capital. But you think about what happens today. We have 500 stations. We have a clicker. We have Hulu. You know, that model is starting to break down. People are ignoring that business model and all those ads. So marketing has dramatically changed. And the new way to market is more like the Grateful Dead. How do you create content and give it away and pull people in a very new and remarkable way? So when you look at your marketing department, if it looks like the marketing department you had 10 years ago and it's the same people, you might want to rethink that mix of people. You want content creators and people who are very good with social media and people who can pull people in versus trying to interrupt them in their living rooms.
Yeah, but Brian, I mean, that might mean that you lose control of your marketing. I mean, isn't that what major corporations are all about, figuring out how to control things?
Pim, they've already lost control. They just don't know it, my friend. It turns out a lot of these big companies, they build these big walls around themselves, and there's very little transparency that happens between the company and the customers and the community. And big fiascos can happen. So Domino's had a big fiasco. BP had a big fiasco. And there's this lack of transparency between themselves and the marketplace. And the marketplace is now happening on Twitter and Facebook and YouTube and LinkedIn. And they need to knock down those walls and have a much more transparent, authentic experience and pull their customers and community in. And if you can kind of compare and contrast sort of modern companies, and I think about what BP did, and boy, all the bad stuff that happened around them sort of spinning in the early days that was going on, bad information about how much oil was coming out of those wells, versus I'll contrast it to one of my favorite companies, Salesforce.com, who rather than hiding the problems they're having with their product, whenever their product goes down, their users can go to something called success.salesforce.com and see any issues they've had with the product, anytime it's down, how long it's been down. They're very transparent, and they sort of lower that barrier between their company and their customers and their community. And I just think the Facebook Gen Y, Gen X generation is going to demand a different posture from companies, different attitudes from CEOs, different attitudes from founders, and going to demand a much different relationship with them. And the Grateful Dead were just terrific at that. And I think we're at the beginning of things swinging back towards that. Companies are going to behave more and more like the Grateful Dead with their transparency and authenticity. Their customers will demand it.
I'm glad you used that word authenticity, Brian. Is it also a question of finding authentic partners so that your success in a corporate setting can also be combined with the success of maybe the nonprofit side of the business?
Sure, it is very important. One thing we do write in the book is about channels, Pim. And one thing that the Grateful Dead that was interesting around partnerships is they didn't have a whole lot of distribution channels. They didn't use Ticketmaster and all those middlemen like all the other rock and roll bands. They let their fans come directly at them and buy tickets from them directly, had a very authentic experience with the Grateful Dead. They made sure the scalpers didn't make money on all the tickets, but the Grateful Dead themselves would make all the money on the tickets. And I think the lesson for modern companies is most businesses set up their channels with partners in different geographies that could sell their product and service their product. But today with the internet, you don't necessarily have to have people all over the country to sell and service your product. You can use the internet to very efficiently sell it, very efficiently to support it. So I think companies today need to rethink their channel strategy, and more probably should go direct to their customers. And my favorite example of that is look at Geico. Geico has stripped out all those layers of distribution in the insurance industry and has really made a lot of profit from it. And compare that to Allstate or Arbella, all the traditional firms that have, you know, 100,000 resellers in those local industries, just taking margin out of the process.
Brian, I got a last question for you. What's your favorite Dead song?
Big Scarlet Begonias fan. Love that song. Big Grateful Dead fan. Like when they play Scarlet Begonias, Fire in the Mountain. My favorite line is, sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right, and I think this is a great example of that.
All right, I want to thank you very much, Brian Halligan, author of the new book about what people can learn in terms of marketing lessons from the Grateful Dead. Coming up, is there a bond bubble? Is it building? If so, will it burst?